The air was thick with anticipation as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow over the city. Streets that were usually bustling with activity were eerily quiet. A tense hum filled the air, as if the world itself was holding its breath. People gathered in the main square, staring toward the sky, their eyes fixed on the approaching ship. The sight of the massive craft descending from the heavens was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. It was a ship of smooth silver, almost otherworldly in its design. It hovered, seemingly weightless, before gently touching down on the plaza. For weeks, rumors had been spreading about the arrival of the alien queen, but no one had truly believed it would happen. There were whispers of her power, of her ability to control entire planets with a single word. They said she had been traveling the galaxy for centuries, bringing destruction to those who opposed her and prosperity to those who obeyed. The stories were chilling, and yet the people were drawn to the square, unable to resist the pull of what was coming. The collective fear and curiosity was palpable. The city had never seen anything like it. Soldiers lined the perimeter, their faces tense, watching for any signs of aggression. But the crowd, ordinary citizens, workers, and travelers from all over the world, stood in silence, their gazes fixed on the Queen's ship.
No one dared to speak as they waited, a collective sense of dread mixed with awe filling the air.
Then, without warning, the ship's hatch opened, and from it, a figure emerged. She was taller than most humans, her features sharp and regal, a presence that commanded attention. The crowd seemed to instinctively step back, as though they felt the weight of her gaze even before she spoke. The Queen was dressed in robes of shimmering black and silver, the fabric flowing with a grace that seemed almost unnatural. Her eyes, a piercing shade of violet, scanned the crowd with a cold, calculating intensity. It was as though she could see through every person standing before her, reading their thoughts, their fears, their desires. As she descended the steps of the ship, a wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear began to grow, but there was also something else, something more powerful. The crowd was not only afraid of her, they were mesmerized by her. The Queen's power was undeniable, and it sent a chill down the spine of every person who laid eyes on her. The silence stretched on, heavy with expectation. Then, the Queen raised her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it carried an unmistakable authority. The crowd fell completely silent, as though a switch had been flipped. Not a single person dared to speak, their eyes locked onto her, waiting for her words. The moment seemed to last forever, the tension growing with every passing second. Finally, the Queen spoke, her voice soft but clear. It was a voice that held both power and elegance, a voice that seemed to echo across the plaza, resonating deep within the hearts of everyone present. "I have come to your world for one reason only," she said, her words deliberate and measured, "to offer you a choice." A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. The words were simple, but the weight of them was enough to cause even the bravest to hesitate. What choice could she possibly offer? What did she want with Earth? The rumors had painted her as a ruler who demanded loyalty and submission. But this was different. Her words did not hold the tone of a conqueror. They held the promise of something far more dangerous. The Queen's gaze swept over the crowd once more, her violet eyes locking on to individual faces as if she was choosing her next words with care. The crowd shifted nervously, unsure of what was coming. Some took a step back, as if instinctively knowing that they were on the edge of something monumental. Others stood frozen in place, unable to look away from the Queen. No one knew what to expect next, but every person in the square could feel the weight of the moment. And then, just as the tension reached its peak, the Queen spoke again. Her voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it, as if she had been waiting for this moment for far longer than any of them had realized. "You can flee now," she said. "Or you can stay and face the consequences of your choice." The impact of her words was immediate. The crowd, once frozen in place, now began to stir. People exchanged nervous glances, some even taking a step back, as if considering the option to run. Others stood their ground, confused and frightened, unsure of how to respond. The Queen's words had not been a command, but they carried the weight of one. The fear in the air was thick, and many felt the instinctual pull to run, to escape the unknown. But there was one person who did not move. Amid the chaos of shifting feet and anxious whispers, a lone figure stood at the edge of the crowd. He was just an ordinary man, no different than any other who had gathered there. But while the others seemed to be caught in a frenzy of fear, this man remained calm. His eyes were locked on the Queen, his expression unreadable. He did not flinch when the crowd began to disperse. He did not step back or turn to flee. The Queen's gaze, which had swept over the crowd like a predator scanning its prey, now rested on him. The man could feel her eyes on him, the weight of her presence pressing down on him. There was no fear in his heart, only an overwhelming sense of curiosity. He had seen many things in his life, wars, betrayal, loss, but nothing had prepared him for this. He was not scared. He was not awestruck. He was simply watching, and in that moment, something shifted. The Queen tilted her head slightly, her violet eyes narrowing as she studied him. Her lips curled into the slightest of smiles, a smile that held both mystery and danger. She seemed to recognize something in him, something that set him apart from the others who had fled. Her voice, when it came again, was softer, almost intrigued. "You chose to stay," she said, her words carrying the weight of an unspoken question. "Why?" The man did not answer immediately. He simply stared at her, as though weighing his words carefully. And then, with a calmness that belied the chaos around him, he spoke. "Because I am not afraid." It was not the smile of a conqueror, nor the smile of a friend. It was something else entirely. It was the smile of someone who recognized a challenge, someone who knew the game was about to begin. The crowd had scattered, the plaza now empty except for the Queen, her entourage, and the lone man who had chosen to stay. But even in the stillness, the weight of the moment was impossible to ignore. The Queen had given them a choice, and those who had fled had made their decision. But the man who had stayed had chosen a path that few would dare to walk. The Queen stepped closer, her movements slow and deliberate. She did not look down at him with contempt or pity. Instead, she regarded him with a strange sort of respect. She could sense that this was no ordinary human. He was different. He was not like the others who had cowered before her power. He was a puzzle, and for the first time in centuries, the Queen found herself intrigued. The man held her gaze, unwavering. He did not move, did not shift under the weight of her scrutiny. He simply waited. The silence between them was thick, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. The Queen finally spoke again, her voice low, almost as if speaking to herself. "You may regret your decision," she said softly. "But then again, perhaps you won't." And with that, she turned away, her robes swirling around her as she walked toward her ship. Her voice, carrying across the now empty plaza, echoed in the man's mind. "Follow me, if you dare." The man stood there, motionless, as the Queen's voice echoed in the empty plaza. Her words lingered in the air like a challenge, a temptation, and despite the absence of the crowd, the weight of the moment only grew heavier. The streets, once filled with the buzz of the masses, were now silent, save for the soft shuffle of the Queen's guards as they moved behind her, their presence unmistakable and oppressive. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, the adrenaline coursing through his veins. But still, he stood unmoving, staring at the Queen's retreating figure. It wasn't fear that held him in place, nor was it doubt. It was curiosity, a thirst for understanding that had always been present in him, but which had never been as intense as it was now. He had heard of the Queen, of course. Who hadn't? She was a legend, a figure of awe and terror. Stories of her conquests, of her single-handed control over entire systems, filled the airwaves and the streets. They spoke of her iron will, her unwavering command, and the way she bent the universe to her desires. No one dared to defy her, no one. Yet here he stood, unshaken, watching her, his mind racing with questions that refused to be answered. She had given him a choice, to follow her or not. He was certain that others, with their own curiosity and fear, would have run at the mere thought of confronting her. But he wasn't like the others. He wasn't afraid, and perhaps that was what intrigued her. Maybe she could sense the absence of fear in him, something so foreign to someone like her. He had been just an ordinary man, a worker in the city, someone who lived a quiet life, until today, until this moment. There was nothing special about him, nothing extraordinary, or so he had always believed. But now, standing here in the quiet after the storm, he wondered if that had been a lie. What if there was more to him? What if his decision to stay was part of something greater? He could feel it deep within him. This moment was the beginning of something far bigger than anything he had ever imagined. He didn't know why, but something about her drew him in. The queen was powerful, yes, but there was more to her, something beneath the surface, something he couldn't yet understand. And that was enough for him. The mysteries she represented, the unknowns that hung in the air like a fog, those were things he needed to uncover. The queen's voice cut through the stillness again, her words sharp and precise. Come. The command wasn't harsh, but it wasn't a request either. It was an invitation and a demand wrapped into one, and it was enough. He didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, his shoes scraping lightly against the stone beneath him. The guards made no move to stop him as he approached the queen, who was now standing with her back to him, gazing up at the stars. He could see the faintest flicker of a smile at the corners of her lips. It wasn't the smile of a conqueror. It wasn't even the smile of a ruler. It was something softer, more knowing, as if she recognized something in him, something that made him worth watching, worth observing, worth bringing into her world. He stopped just behind her, uncertain of what to say, or whether words were even necessary. But the queen spoke again before he could gather his thoughts. I knew you would follow. Her voice was almost a whisper, though it still held that same weight, the same authority. It was as if she had always expected him to make this choice. I've seen many people come and go, she continued, turning slightly to face him, her violet eyes catching the fading light of the sun. But you are different. Most run from what they don't understand. But you stayed. There was no judgment in her tone, only observation. But it felt like more. She was testing him, measuring him, as if she were assessing the value of something precious, yet unknown. Why? She asked, her voice softer now, more curious than before. Why didn't you run like the others? He paused for a moment, considering her question. He had never been one to question his instincts, and in this moment, he knew his answer. His voice, steady and calm, echoed in the quiet between them. I don't fear the unknown. I've always believed that if you don't face what you fear, you'll never truly live. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, something like approval, though it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. She studied him for a long moment before nodding, her expression unreadable. Very well, she said simply. You have chosen. Now you will see what lies beyond this choice. With that, she turned and began walking toward the ship, her steps slow and measured. He hesitated for only a moment before following her, his feet moving on their own accord. The guards fell in line behind them as they made their way to the massive craft that had brought the queen to Earth. The ship was even more imposing up close. It shimmered with an otherworldly light, as if the metal itself were alive, breathing. As they entered the ship, the air seemed to change, becoming thick with the scent of something metallic and alien. The ship's interior was vast and sleek, its walls lined with soft, glowing lights. There was a hum beneath their feet, a soft vibration that seemed to pulse through the air. Everything about this place felt wrong, but not in the way he had expected. It wasn't terrifying, but it was unfamiliar. Alien. The Queen led him through the ship's corridors, which were eerily quiet, save for the occasional distant sound of footsteps or whispered voices. The space was vast, like a city within itself. The walls curved in ways that didn't seem possible for a man-made structure, and the entire ship had an otherworldly quality that made him feel both small and insignificant, yet oddly empowered. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the ship. The walls here were covered in strange symbols, glowing softly in a pale blue hue. The air felt different here, heavier, charged with a sense of power. At the center of the room was a large round table, surrounded by high-backed chairs. The Queen turned to face him, her eyes still studying him with that same intense focus. "Sit," she said, gesturing toward one of the chairs. He took a seat across from her, his mind racing with questions. What was this place? What was happening? But before he could ask anything, the Queen spoke once more. "This is where it begins," she said.
"You are here because you were chosen, not by chance, but because you possess something that others do not."
Something that has long been hidden. And now you will learn what it truly means to stand at the crossroads of this galaxy. The words hung in the air, heavy with significance. He didn't know what she meant, not yet, but he felt it in his bones. Whatever this was, it was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. This was the beginning of something new, the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he knew about himself and the world around him. He looked up at her, his gaze steady. "I'm ready," he said. The Queen's smile returned, just a flicker of it, but it was enough. "Good," she replied. "Let us begin."